Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ruminating Hour on Miss FM. My name is Tony.
Yeah.
Phil.
And I'm Charles. Hello.
Yeah, so I've got Phil and Charles in the studio with us today, and we're talking about something quite interesting. Charles, what are we talking about again?
Well, apparently the Conservative Party has a new leader.
Yes, indeed. And we're talking about a sister, Kemi Adegoke, also known as Mrs. Badenoch, who recently become the leader of the Conservative. Phil, you and I have been mulling over this, being someone of African extraction in our own right. I think it's a fantastic thing, isn't it, for the Conservative Party and for Africa? What do you think? I'm asking you a question.
He's stunned. Stunned into silence.
Will we have jollof rice in 5 years' time at 10 Downing Street? Yeah,
well,
so
that's the first thing you said when you came in.
I think it's good for Labour Party.
It is. But before we actually kind of sink our teeth into all of that, let's look at, because not everyone is going to be, they're not going to know much about the Conservative Party and so on and so forth, unless you actually a UK resident and so on and so forth. And this is going online as well. So the Conservative Party, I understand, has been the most successful party in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And they've been going for quite a while. And they are, in this country anyway,
they're the most successful election winning party in Western Europe.
In Western Europe.
Over the past 100 years. And they are primarily the main political party in the UK who formed the government for more years than any other party does.
Yeah.
Put it this way.
If we're going to compare the Labour Party to them, because the Labour parties we have two leading parties in the UK, the Conservatives.
The Conservatives are right-leaning, Labour Party are left-leaning, but you can't hardly tell the difference between both of them nowadays anyway.
Yeah, because they both try and hug the centre ground, which is where most successful politicians or parties will sit on the centre ground. So the point what I'm trying to find out, Charles, maybe you can help with this, is, the Labour Party have only been in power, maybe
150 days.
No, not this current one. I'm talking about...
out of 100 years,
yeah, out of the last...
it's something like 32 years.
32...
something like that. So, yes, they've only had a much...
A quarter.
Yes.
A third of what the Conservatives had.
That's right.
And that just demonstrates the hold that the Conservative Party has had on our society for decades and years and so on and so forth.
Well, that is due down to the electoral system, because actually... if you had proportional representation, you would have a completely different picture. Because if you actually add up all the other parties, including Labour, and the people who vote for them, you can quite clearly see that most people in Britain have...
the left-leaning tendencies.
That's right. They have an appetite for all sorts of other directions, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's true. But we are where we are with the electoral system. Labour... under Tony Blair had the chance to do something. I'm not so sure that they did anything to address that particular problem. And it's going to be slightly difficult.
It benefits both parties to a certain extent to have the current first past the post system.
Exactly.
Because once you win the majority, you become like an elected dictatorship, for want of a better term.
Pretty much. So so we have the Conservative Party in the UK, and like Charles and Phil have said, they are the most successful party in the Western Hemisphere, and over the last 100 years, give or take, they've been in power for about 5-6 decades.
Yeah, but that was the past. I think actually what is more relevant is to talk today about how they are effectively alive just because they are propped up by the media, who would constantly propose and put them on our screens. But in reality, they have become an irrelevance. And quite simply because they have abandoned the centre ground. I do not agree that the current Tory party is sort of nearer to the centre like sort of Labour under Starmer. I actually think that the reason why they've done so badly is because Middle England has realised that they have veered to the right, and in fact, if you read certain Conservative papers, their obsession is taking back votes from the extreme right of reform, and that's all they seem to be caring about. And the funny thing is that they seem to be completely oblivious to the fact that the Lib Dems have taken 72 seats at the last election. They've taken so many seats in the south of England off them. And they just don't seem to be at all worried about that. And I that baffles me, I must confess.
And I think that's where Kemi...
I think what they're doing with that, I think they saw UKIP as taking a lot of their votes, and a lot of their voters went to, a lot of their Conservative voters who went to UKIP and allowed the Liberal Democrats to sneak through in those particular seats.
Yeah,
but I get your point. I think it's good. Let them go for the extreme right wing votes. Let them continue with the culture wars, which nobody literally pays any attention to.
that works out okay for me because of my leanings. But setting that aside for a minute,
It's time for me to leave.
setting that aside for a minute, if we're going to be quite brutally honest about this, when Boris Johnson won his election in 2019, I think it was, the Reform Party didn't really put forward.
But it was UKIP at the time.
It was UKIP.
Or was it the Brexit Party? It was one of the incantations anyway.
Whatever.
One of the various...
Nigel Farage didn't put forward any candidates. So let's and that gave the Conservatives
free reign.
But even
then, they still got about 40% of the total electorate turnout. It means 6% of the population didn't support them.
Well, yeah, but it's not. If you come out,
if you look at the right-leaning parties, they never make up the majority of the electoral turnout. They never do.
Yeah, but you can't really blame the parties for that.
No, I'm not blaming the parties. I'm just saying that's the system.
Yeah, well,
I'm just emphasizing what Charles was saying earlier, that if we had proportional representation and the votes were cast as they were, and we wouldn't get a Labour Party with what's the majority they've got, something like 180 or something like that, or 200.
Yeah, about 180. I think it's about 180.
Whatever the figures are, a huge majority basically.
Yeah, massive.
You wouldn't have that at all.
Yeah,
because I think Labour wants less than 40% of the overall votes,
and they won 33%. I think.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
And that means 67% of the population didn't want them.
Yeah. Well, Let's stick with let's set the statistics aside and stick with what we're looking at the minute. So I wanted us to kind of build up to where we are today. So, and I think Charles made a very important point when he mentioned the Reform Party. And I think after David Cameron called that, what do you call it? Called the Brexit, no, not Brexit, the referendum. Where and we voted to leave. I think that was the start of that. That's not even the start of it. I think since we joined, when did we join the EU? Was it the 70s?
Yeah, 74.
70.
Well, it wasn't called the EU.
EEC back when we joined the EEC back in the 70s. Whenever it was, we've had people in the Conservative Party who've always wanted to come out of it, and that has kind of slowly built up to the time that
you also had a lot of Labour members wanting out of it.
Yeah, so that's right, and that built up. You had someone like Nigel Farage, who then became the face of it, forming a party and going to Europe and so on and so forth. But the point I'm trying to make is that the Conservative Party in particular has been caught in that loop of trying to capture people on the right. Not the extreme right, because the right can be split into two. You've got the extreme right and you've got the right-leaning people who believe in what Reform Party are doing. So that, in a way, contributed to them losing the most recent election, because Reform Party for the first time had maybe 4 MPs. They may have 5 now.
I think that the way to look at it is actually this: because we have the first past the post system. The main parties like Conservative, Labour have to be a broad church.
Yeah.
So within either party, you have to have people who are very right wing, slightly less right wing, centrist, so on and so forth. So you have to have a whole range of opinions. And certainly, as you suggest, particularly from, the real trouble started effectively after we joined the European Union, because for one very simple reason, that the British government under Mrs. Thatcher decided to turn into law every single European directive. But they did it out of pragmatism, speed, practice. Whereas all the other European countries were looking at all these directives and they were saying, oh, this I don't like, I won't do it. That I don't like, I won't do it. But I like this. Whereas the British government, Thatcher ordered the civil service to take in everything lock, stock and barrel, which was a mistake. And that was the start of the resentment. But then she also started playing a game of, oh, it's not my fault, it's theirs. And they started blaming Brussels. Then a young clown called Boris started writing jokey articles in the Telegraph, which were all full of made-up stories about bendy bananas, and he caught the public's imagination. Lots of laughter, and it's all humorous. It sold newspapers, but the lies started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Then you get to the Maastricht Treaty, 1995. John Major renegotiating for Britain a huge treaty, which he did successfully, but it was at that point that the right started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And they were obviously helped and supported, aided and abetted by some elements in the press, the Daily Express, the Mail, the Sun, the Murdoch Empire, effectively would never like the European Union. But I think the coup de grace for the Conservatives is quite simply this. Johnson, in 2000, the period running up to the election which he won, did something that no other Prime Minister, Tory Prime Minister, ever did. He purged his party of all the centrist, reasonable MPs. And so he reduced it to a rubble of his supporters and people on the right and far right, all the extremists. And this is why they've lost the election so badly, because they can't come to me and you, who are sort of middle-of-the-road people, and say, well, this is a nice set of policies that we've got for you, and it's all very pragmatic, and you could like this, or you could like that. They've got nothing of the sort. And this is why they're in the mess that they're in.
Okay.
And I suppose as well, people just saw through them that they were all in it for themselves. When you had, especially the Brexit, not the Brexit, the COVID period.
Yeah.
Forget the parties, forget the drinking, it was money for their mates. It literally was. It was how do I enrich myself, or how do I enrich my friends, and probably by factor myself as well.
But don't you think?
And then you had like Michelle Mone, who got 20 million pounds for PPE, which didn't work.
Yeah.
And you got so many people, just the pub landlord, who was friends with the health secretary. All those people.
Yeah, by creating that VP lane for PPI contracts, they committed fraud.
Yeah, but these things that we're talking about, I think, happened back in the 90s. I remember.
Not to the extent of which was happening.
Maybe not to the extent of how it happened.
In the 90s, you had cash for questions.
That's it. The envelopes, brown envelopes. Jonathan, someone I can't remember his surname. I think he went to prison for something.
Well, that was a different matter.
Well,
you had the expenses thing as well. And all this. But this was on another level. They literally, I think something like 40 billion went missing, which is the black hole, I suppose.
that we're talking about now.
Well, no, the black hole actually is the thing that even Rachel Reeves doesn't have the guts to talk about. The black hole is caused by Brexit, by the fact that the British economy has shrunk because of the lost business. And it's what the Treasury and the OBR openly admit to. But nobody in government or in opposition is prepared to actually tell the truth about this.
Not at the minute. I don't think now's the time. Probably
we'll be long gone.
It'll
be too late.
Well, we don't know.
And what the Conservatives do in the last election, it was all about the culture wars. They didn't have any policies that had anything to do with day-to-day people's lives. It was all about what Labour wanted. They ran a very negative campaign, and I suppose it comes to a time when the electorate saw the Tories as being in power for too long.
That's always the case. Somebody said that the government is always there to lose the election, and it's down to the opposition. Just keep your gaffes down to a very bare minimum, and you
and
probably.
Now we have a Tory light, a left-leaning Tory party.
Yes, and that's what. And I want us to talk about the current status quo when it comes to the current leader, Kemi Badenoch, who I think is a very, very articulate young lady. I mean, I was checking up on. Well, she's in her 40s.
I thought she was 51.
1980s.
Well, you're not
She-
young at that age. Come on.
No, she was born in 1980, wasn't she?
I don't know. I really don't know.
No idea.
Yeah, she was born in 1980. So I don't consider a woman of 1980 to be old. But anyway, she's, as far as I'm concerned, still a bit young or younger than most people in that position. And highly educated. She's a highly educated woman who left her home country of Nigeria.
No, she was born in Wimbledon.
Yeah. I will come up to that
She's
point
a
in a minute.
womble.
We'll come up to that point in a minute. She was born in Wimbledon, but her mum came down here solely and purely to give birth to her. That's what's been said.
Okay, so
Immediately after she was
baby.
born, that's it. Because back then, don't forget, Margaret Thatcher changed the law in 1983 or 2, so that if you're born in the UK after the 1st of January, maybe 1983, you can't claim automatic citizenship. It would have to be after. But she was born in 1980, so she was caught by that.
See, that's the thing. Actually, that's the hypocrisy of the Conservatives. Then, if you apply that logic to today's Conservatives, that child would be deported.
Pretty much. People who are in the know understand that coming here to give birth to a baby no longer works. You won't get a pass. But that changed in the 80s, and that's why some people would never ever see Kemi Badenoch as English in the real sense of the
I
word.
don't think people will see her as English at all. In people, it's not people. Generalize there too much. Many people will not see her as English, but a lot of people see her as British because she was born in this. There's that distinction.
Yes, but for people, and I don't know who, I've had this conversation with a few people.
That's what she's British. That's
Yeah, but I don't want us to kind of deviate from what we're talking about. But in my humble opinion, if you're born in England, you're English.
Yeah, but
that's a separate matter.
That's
a separate matter.
precisely,
Yeah, that's a separate matter. Most people would think that she's British and so on and so forth. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want us to focus more on Kemi Badenoch, the current leader of the Conservative Party, and her chances of winning the next election.
Which are very slim to none. But
You're listening to the Ruminating Now on Miss FM. Stay tuned, and we'll be back shortly.
Express yourself. Express yourself. You don't never need help from nobody else. All you got to do now, express yourself. Whatever you do, do it good. Whatever you do, Lord, Lord. Do it good. Oh yeah. It's not what you look like when you're doing what you're doing. It's what you're doing when you're doing what you look like you're doing. Express yourself. Express yourself. They're doing it on the moon, y'all. In the jungle too. Everybody on the floor now. Jumping like a kangaroo. So let the horn do the thing they do, y'all. Some people have everything and other people don't. But everything don't mean a thing if it ain't the thing you want. Express yourself. Express yourself. Oh, do it. Oh, do it. Do it to it. Go on and do it. spread yourself, spread yourself, spread yourself, spread yourself. Walk, Lord. Hey, Lord. Hey, spread yourself, spread yourself, spread yourself.
Welcome back to the Ruminating Hour on Miss FM with Charles, Phil and Tony. We're talking about the Conservative Party and their leader, Mrs. Kemi Badenoch. I think, she recently became, I think she became the leader a short while ago, got elected by a majority. I think Charles was saying about 53,000, I think.
Yeah, I think she got something like 53,000 votes.
53,000. You got 30-something thousand.
Oh, well, he got generally.
She won big. She won big.
Yeah, she won big, and I understand that the membership of that party is about 130 now. It used to be 160 under Rishi Sunak.
I take it you've been visiting the graveyards then.
A lot of them died off.
I don't know about that, but I think some of them may have joined the Reform Party. But let's talk about Kemi Badenoch. I'm going to start with you, Phil. Now, she's done very well. There's no doubt.
Of course she has.
Yeah, she's done very well for someone who came back to the UK when she was about 16. What are her prospects of ever leading the country,
I'll say slightly less than zero.
and why?
Because the Conservative Party are in disarray. Unless, politics, winning an election, the incumbent party of government loses the elections. The opposition don't win it.
Okay,
So I'll
yeah,
just say
that's
that.
right.
And Kemi Badenoch, I've seen her protestations before in the past and all those. She is, straight talking, which is good to hear a lot of the times, although what she says, I don't really like hearing. And you know where she stands.
Yeah, and that's why I like her.
Yeah, that's one thing in her, but where she stands is not where I want to stand, because
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
She's a principled person. You know exactly what she said.
in a sense like that.
Yeah, she's.
But
And I understand that she's the only person that can start a fight in an empty room.
well, she's the only person who can start an argument looking in the mirror.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's what's been said about her.
Yeah,
But-
can she win the next? No. The bottom line is no, because she's a black woman. That emphasis on the black, basically. A lot of people who she tries to pander to will not. They'll vote for reform.
Yeah, so
Purely because they don't want. They can't see them wanting to vote for a black woman.
and there's a bit to what you just said there. We're going to have to sink our teeth
Even
into.
what's his name, Rishi Sunak got it as well when I think Channel 4 did an expose on the right wing of the Conservative Party, and they were using the P word to describe him.
Yeah.
And they don't like him. He's not British.
Yeah.
All that stuff, basically. And Kemi has a slight accent as well.
Not a slight one. She does have an accent, just like I have. So there's nothing.
No, you can hear the Nigerian twang in some of her pronunciations and stuff. So again, that's not going to sit well with. It's all good. She'll all get the thing. Yes, some of her best friends are black type of people. Will come out and say yes, I support her and stuff. But when it comes to the cold light of day, no.
Okay.
And not just that. I think. Okay, you can take away. She's part of the whole culture war things as well.
Yeah.
But you take away that. What does she stand for?
Yeah. Well,
And Britain is not a right-leaning country. You get a vocal bunch of people who are loud and extreme right and all that stuff. But generally, Britain is a centrist type of party, basically.
but it's been said that she's actually a centrist. Let me come to Charles first, and then we can talk about where she sits in the spectrum. Charles, what
Yes.
are the prospects of this lady?
Well, I
becoming
agree
a
with Phil. I think her prospects are zero, and quite simply because let's set aside for a minute what she stands for or believes in. In order to be Prime Minister of this country, you have to occupy the centre ground. There are no ifs or buts. You have to be able to appeal to a very broad base. You have to be able to appeal to as many people as possible. The problem with the Conservative Party at the moment is that they have fallen into the reform trap, i.e. blaming everything on migrants. And apart from that and culture wars, there is nothing to appeal to anybody, and all you hear is her occasional slip-ups about but people are getting paid too much maternity leave
Yeah.
and things like that. So she would have to, it is not about straight talking. Populism is what the likes of Nigel Farage believe in, and they think that straight talking, sort of populist ideas is the right way to appeal to people. But in reality, politics is about offering programs, offering solutions, and delivering as well. It's about management. It's about all sorts of different types of skills that you have to have as a leader.
Right.
And I actually don't think she has them.
All right, let me push back on that point. When Keir Starmer came to, when he became the leader of the Labour Party, some people maybe one of them as well, thought that the Labour had swung too far to the left under Corbyn. Yeah, because of what he believed in and so on and so forth. And Keir Starmer, in 5 years, or maybe slightly under, managed to bring that party back to the centre. So I may be wrong in making this assumption. I would argue that Keir Starmer is a centrist to the left. And what I've heard about Kemi Badenoch from members of...
you seem to be forgetting one thing. That she has been a government minister, and whilst a government minister, she delivered nothing.
Yes, but
what's her portfolio anyway?
She was business international
business secretary.
And she was tasked, like Liz Truss before her, to go out and secure international deals. And quite frankly, you look at her record, and I don't know that she could manage her way out of a paper basket.
No, but she signed a deal with is it New Zealand or one of those countries?
Yeah, in their favour. Yes, of course.
In their favour, precisely that.
Well, I bet she signed a deal with them. But
anyone can sign a piece of paper.
Micronesia as well. They've got a deal with.
I don't even know who those are.
Solomon Islands.
Whereas you see, Keir Starmer has got a completely different type of record. He was in charge of a government department and one that delivered results. He's basically, you could argue that Starmer perhaps is a little bit sort of rigid and boring and what have you, but he's a manager. He's somebody who actually, if he starts
he's
with
a
the
technocrat.
process, he's a technocrat. He will start from A, but he will take you to Z. Because if that is his intention, you will get the result. Whereas I get from her and all her conservative ilk is a lot of talk.
Yeah, but
there's nothing beyond that.
Yeah, but people that have worked with her have said that, in their view, she's a centrist.
Well, they would say that, wouldn't they? Because
but this was before the election. This was before she became the leader. Yeah. So
they're trying to promote her.
Maybe.
Well,
maybe.
Perhaps there's a lot of people who really ought to go and visit a certain glasses retailer. Honestly, the centre ground is just like thousands of miles away for the Tories at the moment. It really is.
So even if it's thousands of miles away, like you said, she's got 5 years or 4.5 years to pull them to the centre.
Oh, yes, plenty of time. A lot of people wrote off Labour after the Corbyn loss.
Yeah, so I think that
they had an advantage. Labour had an advantage. They had Johnson.
They
had Johnson to fight.
Yes,
Liz Truss just gave them an open goal.
She did, but if she moves to the centre ground, which is not impossible, because she's got 4 years to do that, maybe 4.5 years to move to the centre ground.
How can you move to the centre ground when the base of your party is so much further to the right than you are, and all they care about is fighting reform?
Look, Bell, it's not you've got to move. You've got to have a position yourself and grab your party by the scruff of the neck, drag your party along with your position, and appeal to those people who are, who used to support you maybe and have either joined Reform or maybe moved on to the Lib Dems. It will take very few. I don't think loads of them have moved to Labour, but loads of them certainly have moved to the Lib Dems. So those Lib Dem supporters and the Reform members is what you're looking to target, surely.
Well, yes, that's the theory, but in practice, she will not do anything of the sort, because so far in the interviews that she's given, she only seems to be talking about regaining Reform voters, and which is again, just like the other candidate, Jenrick, they just seem to be thinking that their natural base is on the right, and they just don't think beyond that.
Okay.
And that's not going to work for them. I mean, what you're saying is correct.
Yeah.
That's what she should be doing.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I actually don't think that's where they're heading. Because the nature of the party has changed completely. I remember, for example, last year, whilst they were having the Truss versus Sunak competition, let's call it that.
Yeah.
There was what's his name? That LBC journalist Ian Dale, who is a Conservative.
Yeah.
He was going around all the hustings, interviewing people, ordinary members, and judging by the views that we were shown by ordinary members, all that we were getting was how radical their ideas were, and they were showing a range of ideas that are really quite further to the right. So yes, ideally they should be appealing to people to
centre ground.
Yeah, Mr. Joe Bloggs, who doesn't really think about politics on a daily basis, but just likes to see that certain things are delivered.
All right, Phil, let me come to you. I mean, Kemi Badenoch is a black woman of Nigerian extraction who came to the UK when she was 16. Her mum came here to give birth to her, take her back to Nigeria to raise her, and so on. Will she be the best person to address the issue of immigration that we have, should she come to power?
Here's the problem of immigration. The problem of immigration is started by her party in the first place. I put problem in inverted commas. I presume you mean those people coming in boats.
Right. That's not the only problem, but let's start that. Take that as a starting point.
The whole thing could have been resolved. I mean, for one, they're not doing it illegally. There's no such thing as illegal immigrants. Those people coming by boats, they're fleeing persecution.
That's a definition that's been given in
let's stick with the facts.
Okay.
The facts are 80% of those people who come over by boat are allowed to stay. 80%, because they're vetted, they're checked, and they're deemed to be fleeing persecution. So therefore, you are only illegal if it's all you're about to be deported. Say they have no right to stay, then you run. That's when you are deemed to be illegal. They're not illegal. People say the whole thing, the illegals. Now, how do you stop it? It's a problem which the West created. If you create wars in other countries, if you deliberately underfund and starve and create an economic policy which is extractive of the homeland of the people who are coming here, then every throughout human history, people have moved to better climes in order to better themselves. Migration has always happened.
And she's an example of that.
Precisely that, basically. I mean, so she can't stop it. I mean, the criminal gangs who are exploiting these people are the epitome of capitalism. So they are exploiting a free market. So I mean, they are literally following the Conservatives' policy of free marketism, basically. Can she stop it? No, you can't stop it. It's like saying, can you stop organized crime? No, you can't.
Well, I mean, the other thing, I'm going to come back to you on that immigration.
And by the way, most migrants come through Heathrow Airport.
Yes, they do.
And Gatwick.
Yeah, they do, because it's subject to the policy and so on and so forth, government policy. And under Rishi Sunak, I think over 600,000 people were allowed to come in, and so on. But that's.
But what people are forgetting as well. Sorry to interrupt. What people are forgetting as well is that we have an aging population, and to cater for the social needs of people who are getting older, you need the younger people to work and pay taxes. The birth rate of this country is dropping.
Yes,
because
it's at the very lowest.
You cannot afford childcare, so you're probably going to have one child as opposed to 2 or 3. So how do you replace that? People are living longer.
Yeah.
So how do you replace that to raise the taxes income?
I mean, and that's part of the problem, but probably a secondary.
So, okay, that's another. But can she stop it? The answer is no. She can't stop it. Nobody can stop it. If you build the necessary facilities in France to allow people to be able to apply to come in those countries, then the boats would be eased. It won't be stopped, because there'll still be people who will exploit it.
But would you? And there's 2 questions I'm going to ask you before I move on to Charles. Hopefully, I'll be able to get a response before we take a quick break. Now, I'm sure you have as well, heard Kemi Badenoch speak of her growing up in Nigeria and how the country was just really in a bad state, and she was lucky that she was born there and she escaped and came here and so on and so forth. Now, someone with that kind of understanding of, fleeing persecution, one country to another.
She wasn't fleeing persecution. She was an economic migrant.
She said that what she said, she was 16 when she came. So what she said was that they had a military regime in Nigeria at the time, and things weren't really safe and so on. So her parents sent her to the UK. So I don't know whether she was an economic migrant.
Working class.
Right.
I thought, sorry, I could be completely wrong, but I thought that her mother was a university lecturer, and in fact, she was lecturing in Canada at some point. I don't.
She comes from a wealthy family.
She comes from a wealthy family, but she was born here,
right?
Just to get that.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason. But the point I'm trying to make is this: for someone who articulates herself so well and describes the issues that she had when she left Nigeria and so on and so forth, surely she'll be in a better position to see why people are fleeing from where they're fleeing from to come to the UK. And if she's in that position, then she knows surely how to address that particular problem.
Well, the thing is, the benefit that she has is that she's black, and not many people will accuse her of being a racist.
Okay.
In that sense. But the jibes from certain sections have already started coming about how she's a black face of white supremacy.
Right. There's a bit that I wanted to talk to. I'm going to ask Charles when we come back, because she doesn't believe in. I think her position when it comes to race and racism is slightly different.
Very different.
Very different to to mine and yours and Charles's, I believe. You're listening to the Ruminating Hour on Miss FM. Stay tuned, and we'll be back shortly. Welcome back to the Ruminating Hour, Miss FM. I've got Charles, Phil, and myself in the studio. We're talking about Kemi Badenoch, the new leader of the Conservative Party, a party that's the most successful political party in the Western Hemisphere. Charles, I'm going to come to you on this one. It's a bit of a tricky one, this. Kemi Badenoch, like we've said before, is of Nigerian extraction, born in the UK. She's English under the law, as far as I understand it, and British, if you want to call her that. And the Conservative Party have demonstrated in the past that they have no ilks or any objections to selecting someone like her, or Rishi Sunak, or Margaret Thatcher, and so on and so forth. But do you think that the country is actually ready to elect someone like Kemi Badenoch? So let's just say that she pulls her party by the scruff of its neck to the centre ground, and she starts to maybe follow the policies of someone like David Cameron, maybe, or even Tony Blair, a centrist, and so on and so forth. Do you think she'd be able to win the election? When you look at, because the UK is not just about the southeast.
Yeah.
So in the southeast, yes, people may not pay particular attention to her being black or whatever it is. They just want to see what she can deliver.
Up north,
Sunderland, Hull, Newcastle, those places, Cumbria, wherever you want to call it.
Well, you don't need to go that far up the country. you go down to the south,
Essex.
Look at Essex, or even to the southwest. In Devon and Cornwall, where if you're not local, well, you're a foreigner.
Yeah.
And so you could be yellow or pink or blue, but it doesn't matter. You're not one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there is that point. It could well be that the people may not be ready to vote for her, and in fact, I actually suspect that. For example, you look at the Scottish National Party, when Nicola Sturgeon was effectively forced to resign or resigned, and they elected Hamza Yousaf. You kind of got the general feeling that because of his ethnic background and heritage, that somehow he wouldn't last very long in that position. You just got the feeling that he would never be, in that position for that long. And yes, I do think that somehow it is not impossible, but I think that somehow there are still an awful amount of people in this country who would not be prepared to accept her.
And Phil,
to be honest with you, I don't think she'll last 5 years.
No,
I think she'll be kicked out by 28.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, let's just assume for a second that she would last 5 years. And let's assume that she would manage to become a centrist leader and move her party to the centre, right? What can be done to address the point that Charles just highlighted there? Because and this is where we were talking about this during, maybe the second part of the show, and I mentioned ethno-nationalism and nationalism, and before the show I mentioned English exceptionalism that you quite known to have talked about in the past. Is that really the problem? Is the problem the fact that she's not a woman? The problem is not the fact that she's a woman. She's a black woman, and if that's a problem, how can we overcome that?
I don't think that's the only problem. I really don't. I mean, that's one part of it, but she won't lose the election because she's a black woman. She'll lose the election because she's not good enough.
So, in that case,
as I said, if it's all, even if she swings to the centre ground, and everybody knows she's not a centrist. And everybody knows that the rump of the Conservative Party are not centrists. So she'll be going against her own political party, and
so someone like James Cleverly, who unfortunately
is more of a centrist than she is.
So if he had won,
it just shows the party do not want a centrist or anyone leaning towards the centre.
But
in any way, shape, or form. And who are the candidates?
Jenrick,
Cleverly, Braverman, Braverman, part of it, and a couple of
Braverman wasn't. It was Tugendhat.
Yeah, he's a centrist.
He's a centrist.
It went out quickly. I mean, what we had the choice was a list of unflushables. Put it this way, complete. How do I describe them? People whose views are so far out of touch with what. I mean, there's a thing about this. London is very different from the rest of the country.
And London and the southeast.
Well, I'll say, let's think, I know London. I don't really know much of the southeast. And the home counties and places like that. But up north, they aren't. They are.
But we have to be careful because we can say London is quite different to the rest of the country.
Yeah.
But Rishi Sunak is the MP from one of those areas,
Richmond,
Yorkshire.
Yorkshire. So,
There, yeah.
is one of the MPs from that part of the world, and you know, people he won the election again. So it's nothing to do with his own race or whatever it is. It's just this party are so entrenched in certain parts of the country that it doesn't matter
It doesn't matter. You can put a donkey there, the donkey would win. Pin a blue rosette on a donkey, and that donkey would. Therefore, they're led by donkeys. Anyway.
No. This is getting a bit personal. Now, I wouldn't go that far. What I'm trying to say is this: where you're entrenched, you know, because of decades and decades, you know, people tend to vote for you no matter who you put forward. The point I'm trying to address here is that you have Labour have certain parts of the country where no matter what happens, especially in London, people will always vote Labour. You can say that about other parts of the country. That in between people that kind of that move, like people that supported the American guy, Boris Johnson.
Okay.
Yeah. So the people that supported Boris Johnson was born in New York, for example. They, because of his policy on Brexit, they supported him and left Corbyn. These are Labour supporters. So it shows that people are prepared to move if you have policies that they strongly believe in, and so on and so forth. You've said that the fact that this lady's, what's her name, Kemi Badenoch, is a black woman, that's not really going to affect the issue per se. It's what she...
It will affect it, but not in a bigger way as people want to make out to be.
Okay, so is there anyone in that party that could actually win the next election?
No.
So
because Boris Johnson, as Charles was saying earlier, he purged the party of the people who have a modicum of common sense. I mean, which was Gork.
Gork.
Yeah. He would have been a good leader for the Conservative Party.
But we just mentioned Tugendhat. Was it Tugendhat? We mentioned James Cleverly.
No,
there's
but
also
even he, Tugendhat, whilst campaigning, whilst being a candidate for the latest leadership campaign, he was showing quite clear signs of leaning towards the right, because that's where he thought the votes for him could be. And he too was saying things that are quite frankly obnoxious on all sorts of levels. The only person, in my view, who could have led the Conservative Party and renewed it is somebody who's not even in Parliament anymore, and that's Rory Stewart.
Yeah.
He's the only man I've heard on one of his podcasts saying, I do not understand why is it that after 45 years of having certain types of policies like privatizations, that we can't have a system whereby we can go back, have a look at what's worked and what hasn't, and change things accordingly. That level of pragmatism is what they need.
When you're stuck with ideology, because you say privatization is good, so what next can we privatize? And they privatize water. Look at it now.
Yeah.
They privatize a rail. Look at it now.
There is another way of looking at this, which is that because privatizing things has been their modus operandi, we've ended up with a class of conservative politicians who quite simply do not understand how the public sector works. They don't understand how the civil works. They don't understand the government machinery at all.
Yeah.
They all think it should be run like a private company, offloaded to give someone else to run, and they just sit there and I don't know what they do.
If you look at energy, in France, it's subsidized heavily by the state.
Yeah.
EDF is a French state company, electric company, and they're they're selling us electricity.
Yeah, well, yeah, we've got a contract
Water,
with them.
there's no country in Europe anywhere where it's privatized. Nowhere.
But-
Rail in Germany, you can go for 10 euros across the whole country of Germany. I went to a wedding in the summer to Taunton. It cost me £125 return.
Yeah, but isn't that because of the Conservative Party's beliefs and their,
When
which
you're
is
stuck with
small-
ideology and you ignore pragmatism.
And the clear example of this is Liz Truss's budget, which was basically made out of Thatcherite ideas from the 1980s. And someone should have told that woman that was almost half a century ago. And the world then was completely different from the way it is now. The very fact that we have the WTO with its rules on international trade should have clearly told them that the world, the
It's
way
no
the
longer
world
there.
works, the
Yeah.
modern world, is
Yeah.
completely different. But then again, under the same token, they didn't get Brexit, so why they would get this? And this is this lack of pragmatism, which actually could and will probably bite back into the Labour government as well, because their current stance is, we're going to change our, see if we can change something with the European Union, doing it piece by piece, when everyone knows it ain't going to work that way.
I mean, our Labour government, I think, what's that, Great British Energy or something like that? I wonder when
GB.
that would kick off. And I wonder why they just don't privatise or renationalise the rail and water. You have some responsibility for that and clean the whole rail.
The
they've
road is going
answered.
to happen, and it's happening gradually, piece by piece. But with water,
I think
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they want to go that.
No,
down that route.
they've said that they're not going to
They've
go.
taken out, the shareholders of the various water companies have taken out more in dividends
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
they've invested.
Yeah.
And now you're getting raw sewage being thrown into rivers and people can't go swimming in.
Yeah. But Labour have made it clear that they're not going to be taking over the water companies
It's a shame,
because of the cost of it all. And at this is not the time to do it.
If only they looked at history, and they would learn that there was one Labour Prime Minister who nationalised everything and did it spectacularly well at no cost. Let's go back to 1945-46.
Yeah.
The Clement Attlee, he clearly showed how you can renationalise an industry by creating a system of bonds where people can, get out of that. And it's perfectly possible.
Guys, we've sadly come to
People talk about money with affordability, but in that time, they started the NHS as well.
So we've sadly come to the end of the show. You've been listening to the Ruminating Hour on Missy FM. We hope you've enjoyed our show today. If you have, please join us again next week for another episode of this show. From me, it's goodbye.
And it's goodbye from him.
And it's goodbye from Charles.
Yes, goodbye.